also want to be cautious about dipping, a lot of us, myself, maybe even included, or primarily talk about our general fund reserve and dipping into that, but I do think this year we're going to do a lot of dipping into that, and I think this might make sense for bonds. But so is there the option to select a to be determined?
I wouldn't
Funding source.
recommend just saying to be determined, because that is more complex for financial tracking. It's easier to designate a funding source and then substitute a different funding source, but we need to, this sounds incredibly bureaucratic, but when we award a contract, we need to set it to an account number, and then I have to be able to track where the money comes from to supplement that, the revenue comes to generate it. So for my own tracking purposes, it would be very challenging if I didn't know what account I was billing this to.
Okay, with that, thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
So, I mean, again, we are in this, having this discussion tomorrow at Finance and Budget, so I think it would be fiduciarily responsible for us to refer this to Finance and Budget, the issuance of bonds. Again, we do have ample, when I refer to surplus, I'm talking about money above and beyond
The
our
16.6,
reserves,
yep,
to be clear.
I
So
know.
it's not dipping in even into our reserves, it's about surplus funds. Excess reserve. So we have ample surpluses. We also have ample availability with our short-term line of credit. So I don't think we should just say, okay, I think this should be discussed at Finance and Budget, and it will come right back. I think we're meeting again
Okay.
on Monday if we need to. So I would like to refer, I can support the project, the lights for the tennis courts, that's part of it, right?
If you want to make a motion, make that motion, because I do want
Okay,
to continue
all right,
on.
then I guess I'd like to move this to Finance and Budget refer this to Finance and Budget.
I will just point out
But
that
I'm sorry, hearing no second on that, that motion is dead, and okay.
the city council has approved approximately $8 million of things funded by, quote, 2023 bonds. So in all cases, all of that money, at some point, there has to be a funding source, a revenue generated that will pay for that. And so it is appropriate for the city council to consider what that would be if it isn't going to be a bond issue.
Thank you. Oh, darn.
And I believe the Finance and Budget Committee is already considering that.
Tomorrow.
Councilmember Burns.
Just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about Mason Park. So I'm not sure the discussion that led to James Park getting lighting, not only for pathways, but I believe I read it's also for the tennis courts.
Yes. A point of order, if I may, just in interest of time, since that's not what we're discussing, unless there's.
It is if I can have a moment. Thank you. So my concern is what led this bid to go out just for James Park as opposed to some of our other facilities that may need lighting for tennis courts and other areas.
This particular contract was started at the request of the Parks and Rec Department. I believe that they have received a lot of commentary from the public, a lack of lighted tennis courts and lack of lighted baseball fields. And so specifically, they were really looking to get that kind of lighting to be able to extend the play hours at the tennis courts and the baseball field.
And obviously I would talk to Councilmember Harris about this, but where would getting lighting for Mason Park fit within this? Would that have to be a new bidding process? Could we expand the scope of this project if there was support to do so?
That would really have to be a new bidding process. The design hasn't happened yet, and so that would be a struggle to then now try to do that. There's a lot that goes into athletic lighting. Because of the tall poles, they need fairly substantial foundations. Electrical source has to be identified, et cetera. So a lot of times there's some significant electrical work or a new service from ComEd. So it's certainly something that could be added to the capital program. As you'll recall, we actually do have a long-term project where we're going to be looking at Mason Park,
That was
and
gonna
we
be my
could
next question, yeah.
add the scope to that, although this section of Mason Park you're referring to is not funded by tax increment financing, so it would have to have an alternate funding source other than from the rest of that particular project.
Okay, and just because do you know when that's going to start? Just a date for that yet or no? The Mason Park expansion?
Soon. The reason I say that is because we are working with the IDNR on a separate issue related to the property conversion at Fleetwood Jourdain. And that appears to be wrapping up in our favor pretty favorably. So we're happy to see that happen, and then we'll begin the public engagement for the Mason Park project.
Okay. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly, is this, sure, go ahead.
So, yes, we did identify bonding as a source when we passed the budget last year, but we also identified that when we were unaware of the really significant surplus that we had at that time. So we passed that without that knowledge. So I think that's also important. So I guess I have a question for, if you could, so what we're voting on is the executing a contract with Jasco Electric. That's the recommended action. And then under it has funding source. So when we approve, if this gets approved, are we also approving the funding source or just the action? Can that be changed?
Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. Alex Ruggie, Interim Corporation Counsel, Chair and members of the committee. So the funding source can be amended, as Ms. Biggs mentioned. You're approving the contract. The funding, if it's not bonds, if you don't approve bonds, the funding will be approved elsewhere.
So to vote in favor of this does not mean that we're necessarily voting that this has to be through bonds, or would we have to go back and bring this back and amend it? What I'm wondering is, can we, since we do have money, we have, again, ample excess funds, and bonds are expensive for our taxpayers, and we absolutely should continue on the trajectory of reducing the tremendous debt that the city has. Not say, okay, we reduced it, let's move it back up. That's not the direction we should be going in, Councilmember Reed. So if we vote on this, does that mean we'd have to actually bring it back to amend, or can we vote on this and then pay for it from a different source?
Yeah, so you would not have to bring it back to amend it. And a vote for this does not mean you're voting to issue the bonds. It's just for the contract. And then if the funding source is not identified, the bonds are not there, a new funding source will be identified, but the money will have already been approved.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so voting on this is not necessarily, is not a vote of approval to fund it via bonds?
Correct.
Okay. It's only to issue the contract?
Correct.
So this is like a suggested funding source?
Well, as Ms. Biggs mentioned previously, it was approved as coming from bonds
Right.
when this was proposed. So that's why staff had to place that in there. If bonds are not approved, then the funding source is amended.
Okay. Okay, and again, we approved it without the knowledge of the significant surplus. Okay, thank you very much. So this would be approving simply the action of executing the contract, but not giving an approval to a funding source. It's just listed as what was presented in the budget for '23. Thank you very much.
Thank you. With no further discussion, all those in favor of item A2, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The item passes. That brings us to item A3, approval to hire 3 additional human services resource positions. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Nusma, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Any discussion on this? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand a little bit about how, if there's any chance in the future that we can set up some sort of a system for metrics when I trust that we need these positions, but it would be helpful. I've seen in other cities where they do have metrics so that you have a sense as, the steward of our budget. It would be for me to provide accountability to constituents and residents to be able to actually demonstrate the accountability behind hiring more people besides that we just need them, or, some form of metrics would be wonderful if that's a possibility. I'm just wondering if going forward, maybe City Manager Stowe, you could address that. I think it would bring more accountability for us when we vote, because positions are expensive, right? Every position is a very expensive undertaking. So I guess and I'd also like to hear about the need. I trust that we do have a need for these positions, but if you could also speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Danquah.
Good evening, good evening. So yes, I can speak to the need.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, Mary Danquah, Interim HR Division Manager. So in regards to the need, we have been short-staffed for quite some time. It's taken us several months to fill one of our vacant generalist positions, and we continue to grow in size. So as the organization continues to grow in size, there is a need for additional staff in the Human Resources Department. I think there's no secret that HR has been under scrutiny for quite some time, and that is due to a lack of staff. Some of our positions have been cut in previous budget years. In order for us to run the department effectively and efficiently, we do have to have staff available. And we're finding that it's very challenging without having staff available to assist departments, fill positions, attend to a lot of employee relations needs, complaints. It's very difficult. So in order to do that, we have to have bodies in the department. There are many things that I think will come forward at some point in terms of recommendations for the HR department to get us to the place that we need to be. So we're not under so much scrutiny. In order for us to do that, we do need staff.
Thank you.
So the three positions are,
There's one HR generalist. So currently we have 3.
and can you describe, again, the generalist does,
Yeah, so the generalist is responsible for recruitment, employee relations, labor relations, FMLA leave administration, so investigations, so if there are complaints, so similar to a large complaint that came through a few years back, that person would be responsible in collaboration with the HR division manager responsible for doing investigations.
and do we have, is this an additional generalist?
Yes, so we
Okay.
currently have 3 in the budget.
Okay. We have 3, so this will be our, I apologize, this will be our
Fourth.
fourth. Okay, and then the other 2 positions are,
The other 2 are safety assistant, and that would be in support of our safety specialist, who currently does all training for city staff. And part of why this role is very important, or why this position is needed, is because you have one person in the city that is responsible for doing training for all city staff. And we want to reduce our workers' comp claims, but in order to do that, you have one person that is responsible, again, for all city staff. That's very challenging for one person and taxing for one person to do that. So having support, additional support, would be very helpful to this individual.
thank you. So again, also for the public, so the other positions are positions that train staff?
So the safety specialist is one in charge of training staff, making sure that we're compliant with OSHA standards, and then having, again, the safety assistant would be an additional support to this individual.
Okay, we do similar work.
Yes, similar
Okay,
work.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris.
Thank you so much for stepping up, and we know that HR is important. HR tends to be the heart of any organization. If your HR is not working well, then nothing else will work well. And tomorrow will be my 1-year anniversary of being on the council. And my first meeting, the first thing I said to our city manager is, we need HR, that we have a problem. So I am fully in support of these. We have over 800 people who report to, we're a conglomerate, we're big. And we have how many people right now in HR?
11.
11, okay. So we're under standard, and we want to be the best city that we can. So I appreciate you all stepping up to the plate and realizing we need this help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive as well. Appreciate the work you've been doing to bring our HR department up to standards. I just have a question. When we are fully staffed with HR generalists, will they be assigned departments that they are embedded with, or will they all have an office in the HR wing? I'm interested in making sure that the rank and file employees know who their HR person is and develop a relationship and feel comfortable going to that person.
Absolutely, great question. So currently with our current HR generalist staff, they all support multiple departments, and having the 4th generalist will allow us to spread the departments amongst those 4 individuals and provide better service to the departments that they support. So there, of course, will probably be restructuring in terms of the departments that our current generalists support, and building those relationships, because right now it's really tough. I can say that we're struggling to find top talent, and that's one of the greatest struggles in HR right now, as well as an uptick in employee complaints. So being able to be fully staffed and having those business partner relationships with our departments are going to be critical to the success of our department.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly, in the interest of time, do you have a motion or anything that you?
No, that's okay. Thank you very
Okay,
much. I
thank you.
appreciate your time.
With that, all those in favor, or I'll just very quickly say I also I share the feedback that some of my colleagues have shared about the importance of adding these positions. You know, as a city clerk, I was closer to an employee than I am now as a council member, and I understand you know, all that the HR department has to go through, and so really excited to see these new positions. With that, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstentions? The ayes have it. That moves us to item A5, approval of a one-year contract extension with MC Squared Energy Services, LLC, to provide services to an aggregated group. Do I
So
have a
moved.
motion? Moved by Councilmember Harris, seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Nusma. Any discussion? Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I just wanted to allow an opportunity for Kara to talk about the agreement and relationship we have with MC Squared. I don't think we talk about these type of agreements enough, and just for the public benefit, I would love for you to give us a sense of who MC Squared is and what we, yeah.
Sure. Good evening, Kara Pratt, Sustainability and Resilience Manager. I'm here before you to recommend that the City Council authorize the City Manager to execute a one-year contract extension with MC Squared for our Community Choice Aggregation Program. As a reminder, there are several thousand Evanston accounts and residents that are enrolled in Community Choice Aggregation. This has been a program that's been around for several years now, that first originated from a referendum that all residents participated in to allow for the purchase of electricity through an aggregation program instead of just directly from MC Squared. In the past, this program has been used to buy renewable energy certificates so that residents could say that their electricity source was from a renewable source instead of from the ComEd grid.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns. Seeing no further discussion on this item, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any abstention, or any nays, any abstentions? The ayes have it. That brings us to item A6, Resolution 48R23, authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for the purchase of real property at 1821 Lake Street. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Harris, seconded by
Second.
Councilmember Nusma. I think Councilmember Kelly, you pulled this off.
I'm going to let it go. That's all right. Never mind.
Nope, okay. Councilmember Harris.
Yes, so I'm excited about this. I've, again, coming up on 1 year, and I've talked about beautifying and doing something with the lake and Dodge area, and this is one of the beginning steps. Director Zalmanazak has been working diligently at this at my request, so thank you so much, and I look forward to passing this.
All right. Oh, Councilmember Nusma.
I have an item for discussion.
Oh, okay. Seeing no further discussion on this item, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Are there any items for discussion? Councilmember Nusma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rather than waiting to the end of council and doing this at call of the wards, I just wanted to take this time to give a shout out, since this is the A&PW committee, to the crew that was on the job almost immediately and stayed until the job was done at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. This is a crew that responded to a water main break on Wesley, just north of Dempster, a week and a half ago. Edgar, you know the names of the crew members involved?
I'm not 100% sure of all the names, but I do know some of the names there were Joe Conrad, Pablo Sariana, Adan Carrillo, and I think McDonald's was there as well. I think there was one person I'm forgetting, but we really appreciate you recognize their hard work and their dedication.
Great job. It's obviously a well-oiled machine. The neighbors who were standing out, in the street at 11 o'clock at night were very impressed. Everyone was well communicated with. I got really good feedback from the neighbors. So it's great that we have a well-oiled machine to respond to breakdowns in our aging infrastructure. it's unfortunate that we have to maintain a well-oiled machine, but that's what you have when 30% of our water delivery system is over 100 years old. So, thank you for if you could pass that word along to the staff, we really appreciate it. Right.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other items for discussion? Seeing none, that concludes our business. Council will be ready to start in 10 minutes? 5 minutes. All right, we'll be ready to start council in 5 minutes at, or let's just make it around 5:50.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.